Miss Assistant, will you let us know when we're live on the YouTube?
It says that it's live.
Oh, look, I can read too. Thanks for pointing that out.
That's what I'm here
Take
for.
off my glasses so I can read better. All right. I guess I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. on January 28th, 2021. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a roll call, please, sir?
Ms. Combs.
Here.
Mr. Ricks.
Here electronically.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Smith. Here. Mr. Swayze.
Here.
Mr. Underwood.
Here. That brings us 3.0, modification pool of the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to modify the agenda to add action item 4.2, pause superintendent search committee activities. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other modifications for the agenda? Call for the vote, please, sir.
Ms. Combs.
Aye.
Mr. Ricks.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Aye. Mr. Swayze.
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Aye. Motion carries. The agenda is modified. Brings us to action item 4.1, 2020 to 2021 amended budget. Do I have a motion to approve the amended budget?
I make a motion to approve the amended budget.
Thank you,
I'll
sir. Do
second.
I have a second? Thank you, sir. All right. So, I saw some comments from the DAC. Questions?
A lot of
Questions.
comments.
Okay, I saw those emails at work, and at work I can't open attachments in Google. So, Ms. Goggin, if someone can elevate her, please, or ask her to unmute. Are all those questions addressed, and is she satisfied? I don't know how to, I guess I'll promote her to panelist. Oh, she raised her hand.
It's more and then allow to speak.
Oh,
Not yet.
there we are.
So yeah, everything was answered. I appreciate it. I knew there was some abbreviations. I just wasn't quite sure what some of them were. So everything.
Well,
that,
I subsequently got home and looked at very, very briefly some of your questions, and some of them seem to be very insightful questions. So I don't care about abbreviations, right? It's those really pertinent questions that you ask. Those are satisfied for you? The answers satisfied you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to, if Pat's on here, I just appreciate the way that she broke down the line items. So last year, it wasn't quite as detailed, and I feel like she did a really good job to show like salary and wages, benefits, because I know I had a lot of questions last year on some of their other abbreviations. So I feel like she made it pretty clear. So appreciate it.
Okay.
You're very welcome.
She says you're welcome if you didn't hear that. All right. So, any other questions, comments, discussions on the amended budget? On the amended budget? I gotta check the participants, make sure nobody's raising their hand. Oh, it's the only, all right. Well then, sir, I guess that means call for the vote.
Ms. Combs.
Aye.
Mr. Ricks.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Aye. Mr. Swayze.
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Aye. Motion carries. The amended budget to pass. I'm assuming there's some kind of posting that has to be done with the state or something along those lines. So you now have authority, Ms. Pat, to go ahead and make those postings. All right, that brings us to 4.2, pause superintendent search committee activities. Do I have a motion to approve 4.2?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Well, I think Ed beat you there, Paul. All right, so if for those of you that remember January 6th special meeting, action item 4.2, we passed direction to the superintendent search committee to instruct them to post a job for a single role superintendent. So we're still very, very, very unclear as to what revenue is going to look like from the state this next fiscal year. And at the same time, we also have a policy that says we are going to approve a balanced budget. We're not sure, based on our uncertainty with the state expected revenue, as to whether or not that is actually going to be possible for us to have 4 administrators financially. So this motion is to pause the superintendent search committee activities, although I think they've done an outstanding job to date. Job descriptions done, requirements, preferences. You guys are very far along on your interview process and your selection process. I think you've done a great job, but we're not sure we can afford a single role superintendent. So my motion here is to pause the superintendent search committee activities until such time as we can figure out as to whether or not we can figure out to hire a single role superintendent, or if we're going to have to maintain our dual role. That's how close the money is. We expect, once the School Finance Act is introduced in the legislature, that the Joint Budget Committee, there's a group of people that work for the Joint Budget Committee that post projections. So we don't have to wait until the law is passed necessarily to determine whether or not we're going to be able to afford single role. But we certainly have to wait for the School Finance Act to be introduced and those projections to be published. That's my opinion. I'm one of 5. Please discuss, comment.
Do we have
Questions?
any idea when that might be? When, I mean, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but is it gonna be next August? Is it? gonna be
No, it'll be March, probably
Probably March?
mid-March. So we're looking at so I know the reasons, and trust me, I'm as torn by this as anybody else. The reason we started our superintendent search committee in January is because,
Right.
quite frankly, that's the time frame to do it.
That's time frame.
We want whomever we hire to have a say in other position hiring. So we're looking at
Right.
hiring 4 teachers. We're looking at posting for the potentially, depending on who we hire, the junior senior high school principal, assistant principal, or
Yeah.
dean, or whatever it is we're going to do, whatever we can afford. And we wanted that new person to have a say in that process. And I think we're just going to have to give up on that.
Delay it right now.
So I think we're just going to have to delay it. And then our current interim superintendent is just going to have to post for those jobs at the appropriate time and be part of the interview process and be part of the selection process of those individuals. And our new superintendent is just going to buy whatever our current interim superintendent sells them.
Well,
I'm sure they can hear you. You're close enough. Just,
so, and part of that is,
I got you.
good.
Yeah.
I would say principal hiring generally doesn't start till mid-March anyway. So if the stars align and things happen, we're early, which is better. We're not going to procrastinate.
But as I've heard, not to contradict you too much, sir, in listening to the superintendent search committee's meeting earlier this week, there are lots of districts who have already posted
Yes.
for superintendents.
For
Many
superintendents, but not for principal and for teacher yet.
Right,
And that's what that superintendent is.
right. But
going
if
to do.
we re-energize the superintendent search committee mid-March, then we will not,
It won't be till April.
till mid-April probably, till we have
Correct.
a list of finalists
Correct.
or preferred candidate.
Correct.
So that person may not be able to have a role in the hiring of the new positions, which, obviously is not what we wanted to do. But I don't know. Thoughts, ma'am?
It's not what we wanted to do, but if it's the financial responsible thing to do, then I believe we need to wait. I mean, I agree. This is
I-
the prime
I
time,
wouldn't have introduced the
Um,
motion if I didn't think it was the
but
responsible thing to do.
definitely We, especially coming off the budget year we just had, we don't want to pull the trigger too soon and then go into deficit spending and then be in trouble for years to come.
Right.
We definitely want to see what our capabilities are before we go and write checks we can't cash possibly.
Sir, Mr. Smith,
Um,
your thoughts?
my thoughts on it is, we wanted to do that for our superintendent, but at the same time, if you go to these districts and they hire a new superintendent, they walk in and their team's already in place. So in reality, we are trying to really do a solid for whoever comes in. But the reality of it is, unless there's been a traumatic school year, they're walking in with a team they don't know from Adam already. So from that aspect, I don't think it's gonna be anything different than what a superintendent would normally walk into. It's just, there's that little bit of angst of here, I got a brand
Concur.
new position and they were just hired today and I don't have their history of how they performed in that district. But I concur with yourself and Danielle that it's the prudent thing to do based upon what we know right now. And I would rather be able to let the district know that we're looking out financially and economically to ensure that we are sound as a district than just pulling the trigger to get somebody here real quick
Right.
that might see where we're at and decide to leave. And then we got to search again. That's always a potential. If we pull this trigger and just go for it and they come in thinking one thing and then they start looking at our financials and find out another.
And then if we have to come back to them and
Right,
try to renegotiate dual role after we've already agreed to single role,
exactly,
they may tell us to pound sand and now we're looking for another super and the school year started.
exactly. So I think what's,
If we don't get this money, which is a good possibility. I hate to do this. What's the possibility of just keeping our interim till next year, school year, and then look?
That's an option.
it's an option that we would have.
But
to-
we would
I don't like
really
doing
need
that,
to,
but
we
we
would
have to negotiate.
really need to get a good feel from the community as to whether or not that's something that would be
Money,
amenable
money,
to them.
our budget.
Mr. Rick, sir, what are your inputs?
Well, I feel that we all are on the same page about dual role. That's not our preferred goal. So if it means waiting to see if hopefully we can get the funds to go the route that we feel is best for the district, unfortunately, that's what we need to do. But again, I feel there's really no other course of action. Pulling the trigger just to pull the trigger is really stupid. So just being blunt.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things we make, and again, we're going to wait to make any further decisions on superintendent based on this motion until such time as we can determine the financial feasibility, single role, dual role, any other of the options that we have.
And when we move forward, we're keeping the same search committee, correct?
That's my feeling.
Okay,
They've
that's-
been picked, they
yeah.
volunteered, they've been
They put in
picked.
the work, the legwork, yes.
Right. And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if we do have to retool and go to dual role, I mean, I think 75% of the work that the search committee has done would be part of that.
Yes.
You know, they just have to tweak the job description and the
But I don't-
requirements and the preferences a little bit to account for that.
So I definitely want to confirm that
Uh,
we're not going to find a new committee. What we have is already.
That is
set in
not
stone.
my intent.
We are just postponing this until we know the financials.
Right. Now, you know, obviously we may have to consult with council
Okay.
to see whether or not that's allowed.
Sure.
If that is allowed, then, you know, that's where I would go, but that is not the motion on the table at this time.
I just
And
want to
our
clarify
motion-
for the community.
Our motion is to pause, not dissolve.
Correct.
Right.
Good way to put it.
So anything else from anyone? I'd ask Pat, but she's in the room. She's not, she's online and in the room. So. All right, anything else?
No.
All right, call for the vote, please, sir.
Ms. Combs,
I,
Mr. Ricks,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Mr. Swayze,
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Aye, motion carries. Superintendent search committee's activities are paused. So that brings us to other business. I was going to ask for an update of superintendent search committee activities, but it seems kind of moot right now.
Right, and we need to let the search committee know that now we don't have a meeting.
I would contact the board assistant and have her make that notification post haste, sir.
Okay, good.
But Mr. Secretary, sir, do you have an update on the 2021 comprehensive policy review?
Yes, the assistant has finished their initial thorough raking through of all the policies. and what we did.
Reconciliation.
Reconciliation is a good word. And it looks like there's about maybe 20 policies that may need to come back to the board because we haven't found source documentation for. And there's going to be for sure a few of the policies that are going to come back. And they're the ones where we had a lot of discussion about like how far a student walks to school, where the bus picks them up. And there was another one based on the school lunches where we decided on at what point do we stop feeding and go to corrections or collections. In the recordings, that wasn't very clear. So we may bring, more than likely, those two will have to come back to the board to make the decision to fill in those blanks.
I thought it was very clear in those with respect to the bus. No student walks to school.
Right, but the distance was, no student
bus
walks to
stop.
school, but there's still that distance of where we don't go,
Their bus
the
stop.
bus stop. It's like,
Yeah,
the verbiage was, it was a compromise, because the verbiage was, even if you live closer to school than that bus stop, you can drive your kid to the further bus stop and we'll bring them in.
Right.
right.
But there's still that rule where we look at, there's that radius of where we're not providing bus services specifically to you. And that's the number we have to come up with.
We gotta be
No,
careful.
I thought we agreed that number was 0. If you can get your kid to a bus stop, we will take them to school.
I don't, I can't, I don't think it was totally 0. I know we had that language in there. You get on the bus stop, we'll bring them.
That is true. We said that. It doesn't matter if they're at a bus stop, but we gotta be careful because there's roads over there we can't travel.
Well,
on.
and we also said very clearly in that policy that our buses
Bus
do
stop.
not go
No,
off of county maintained roads. They
Right,
will stay on county maintained roads.
Right.
Even if they're dirt roads, as long
Yes.
as they're county maintained,
Right,
we'll
right.
drive on them.
right.
And I mean, we can look at those and see, and I need to look at listen to the recording myself, and that data may
I'm
be
curious
there.
of the bus stop one, just because I'd like to see it too.
Yeah, we can extend. I got
You weren't on
told
the
by,
board when we passed that?
I remember it briefly,
she had just come on the
but I
board.
believe I just
Okay.
came on the board.
Yeah.
And then I don't
Well, I
think,
mean, if it is your preference that we re-review that one, okay.
Well,
And
yeah,
then-
I just, let me know which policy.
yeah,
you
and then if
want.
I recall
The
correctly,
EAEA.
Yeah.
there was some direction, even when we passed the final one, there was a little bit of direction to find that number. I don't think that number ever came to
Danielle.
us
Right,
I
for
think
the
it's
school
that one.
lunches.
Okay.
right.
And I think it's good with all the stuff that's
I will.
happened, but that's probably a good one to revisit.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a hard one too,
It is hard, but,
because you can't cut the kid out of eating.
Right.
You don't want to do that. But here, mom and dad owe $1,000. That's
Right.
kinda-
So that we did discuss at length
we did.
the dollar figure at which we would initiate collections after so many attempts to try to.
or if they left the district with the bill,
Right.
and that was a,
See, I don't understand that. You can't out process in the military. Why are we
No,
letting
this
them
isn't
out
the
process
military.
in school?
there was a rule passed a few years back because that was happening. Kids didn't have their lunch bill paid. The
Right.
schools weren't giving them their books or anything.
Right,
And their legislation came out and says you cannot withhold a student's transfer based upon their outstanding lunch balance. But it doesn't say we can't send them to collections.
Correct.
It just says we can't not let them out process.
oh,
And it was really interesting how it specifically
yeah.
talked about the lunch balance. It didn't talk
After
about
s-
destruction of notebooks. It talked about
Right,
lunch
yeah.
balance.
After seeing how many past due balances we have, I believe we probably have a lot of kids that would not get fed.
Yeah.
That's.
Well, I don't think,
Especially now
and
with
if
the-
I remember our conversations, okay, I don't think anyone ever suggested that we stop feeding
Well, no, I'm
students.
saying,
No.
but there would be a lot that would
And-
just get like a PB
and
and
we
J and
don't-
an apple. I mean,
No, we talked
didn't.
about that too. We
Yep,
don't
we
do
did.
that. If
That's-
I get a
that costs
regular
too much.
meal, Randy gets a regular
Yep.
meal. Don't matter.
Doesn't matter how
Okay.
much
No
either of us
PB&J.
owes.
Because
We're too
other
small to do
schools
that.
do that.
Mhm.
You get a PB and J.
And then you're
No,
gonna get that
No,
that stigmatism
Yes.
from the other kids. No, we're
that
not
came
doing
from
that.
our
No, okay.
Food service managers, it costs more to make that PB&J.
Yes,
just give them
that's
the regular
exactly what
lunch.
she said. You're right.
It
So
wasn't
then
about
you
the
just
stigma.
go after the parents for a collection.
Right.
I think that's.
Yeah, and there,
Hold
we
the parents
negotiated that
accountable.
dollar figure for, it escapes me what that number was right now. But yeah,
But that one for sure needs a little more research, and there's, like I said, there'll probably be maybe 20 that have come back to the board because source document isn't there.
and then once we got a handle on that, then we have to go and look at what has CASB changed since we did that policy review,
Correct.
and there'd be another 20 or 30 on top of that.
Exactly.
And-
Then we'll be solid, and then after that, we need to come up with a firm plan.
To get it.
So
So
I have a suggestion.
I did some quick math in my head, and it would be review 10 policies a meeting, every meeting. And in 3 years, we would be through, or in 4 years, we'd be through all our policies. And if we just did that cycle,
So
That's
one of
how-
the things that I thought of is, we just changed policy BG.
Yeah.
Okay. Where we talked about, twice a year, we're going to go in and look at what's changed. And, but I think we should probably make a regulation, BGR, and it says, okay, once we identify those policies that need to be changed, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take, we're going to make a copy of it in the repository. We're going to move that copy to a certain special folder that's flagged as, hey, in review, in update,
Yeah.
whatever. And then it'll sit there for first read, it'll sit there for second read, then the changes will be accepted, put back into the Word repository, converted into a PDF, and posted in the PDF repository for public access. And so I think we should write a regulation to that effect and maybe incorporate some of the stuff that Mr. Smith just talked about how we won't bring more than 10, or I think 10's a little small, but whatever the number we agree on, 10 policies per meeting. And then in addition to that process, then do again what Mr. Smith said, which was, okay, we're going to grab 10 policies a month and we're going to review them, even if there haven't been any changes to CASB. So and you'd have to do that math. It's so if we do 10 a month, that's 120 a year, 360. So yeah, it would take 3 years and 6 months to go through all the policies that are currently in the CASB policy manual.
Okay.
and actually, I saw Ed shaking his head, so I guess my streak of agreeing with me might be over, but if you look at how cyclically we really should be reviewing those, and you look at the cyclic of how board members could come on and off, if we have a 3.5 year cycle, that's going to keep that consistency so that we have.
That's going
a
to keep
board-
every board member engaged in policy.
Exactly, which is what we're called to do statutorily, is lead the district via policy. And that
then
will
if we
get us,
have the regulations that you're talking about,
the regulation would tell us how.
when we're gone, then the new
Yes.
board members have this document to reference back to on this is how it's done.
Right, because you've heard
And then
me.
it keeps the consistency as well.
Yes. So you've heard me talk about all this time how we need to have like this transition document for new board
Yes,
members and
yes.
says, hey, this is how we do things, da 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 da. But if we don't pull it in policy or regulation, they can completely ignore that
Mhm.
and do whatever they want.
Mhm.
And so I think we need to set future boards up for success and write this regulation. And document what we do, when, and how we do it.
And then reviewing 10 of them, whether they need to be updated or not, or however we need to decide a board meeting. I like that because then it's gonna keep us from having 15 to 20-year-old policies, like we
Right.
just had to revamp everything.
Right.
And if you remember in the 2018 policy review, there were some policies in there whose dates were simply pre-1990.
Yeah.
So think of that. It's been 30 years since some of those policies have been reviewed by a board of education in this district. Unacceptable, in my opinion.
And I think it's good because it's going to force the issue that boards beyond us are looking at their policies.
Mhm.
And because in 3 years, there might be something odd that happens that it might not be called out by CASB, but it might need to be updated, such as the buses. We might get, more paved roads or less paved roads or something. We're like, wait a second, this bus thing doesn't make sense, or this
And
food
we-
thing doesn't make sense. So there are ways that I just think it's
Yeah.
good because it keeps the board to understand about the business they truly are, which is to have those policies to give the direction to whoever the
And if we
superintendent
lead by
is.
policy, which we do, and if we stay on top of it, and if we're always engaged in it, the community then will learn how to go to the policies.
Right.
You know, it'll just
Right.
reinforce that this is what we are, these are what our guidelines are, these are our policies, and then we're consistent, they should be consistent, you know?
Yep.
And in theory anyways.
In theory.
My favorite words, consistent.
Okay. So, all right, so that covers that. Based on the events that, you know, it's ongoing, I'm hoping to have a draft of that regulation for at the February board meeting. Can't promise it, but that's my goal. All right, any other business?
Come see the teachers get pied in the face tomorrow afternoon.
I can't. I'm working, but
Potential administrators and board members.
Oh, I
volunteer.
can't, my daughter, if my daughter has to miss, I have to miss.
Volunteer, got volunteered.
voluntold.
That's
Um,
better.
Well, I mean, technically, pie in the face. If they're wearing a mask, they're only getting half the face. I mean,
Ah, true that.
Oh,
But if I
wow.
was a mask,
Always a
would be
sunny
nice.
side, isn't there, Paul?
always.
Okay. So any other business?
No,
All right, hearing none, that brings us to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Goggin.
I think the meeting, I think my drive is longer than the meeting. isn't it?
So we're fine, but that's okay.
It is okay. I'm not gonna lie though, when I got in, it was pretty cold. And on the drive over here, I was thinking, did I really though?